Daniel 9 starts with Daniel recognizing that the 70 years of exile, as prophesied by Jeremiah in Jeremiah 25:11-12, are nearly up, and he's concerned that returning to Jerusalem may no longer be possible. Too many people have forsaken their father's religion. Gabriel reappears to give Daniel understanding. He tells Daniel that a symbolic 70 weeks are determined for his people, affirming what Daniel knew. The Jews were going to be punished for their sins an additional 7 times, according to Leviticus 26:14-35. Most commentators implicitly realize that a day for a year is required to fulfill this prophecy. Using a day for a year, we see this prophecy spans 490 years. 490 years are determined to the Jews, starting from the commandment to restore and rebuild Jerusalem. The Messiah will herald the last 7 years. In Scripture, we have 4 commands to various people to restore and build Jerusalem or parts of it. The first being recorded in Ezra 1:1-4, is Cyrus' original command in 536-537 that ended the 70-year cycle and allowed the Jews to return to Judea and rebuild the temple. However, Cyrus died 6 years later, and his successors halted the reconstruction. Then, in 522 BC, Darius I reaffirmed Cyrus' command, and temple construction resumed, recorded in Ezra 6:1-12. Up to this point, the focus had only been the temple. The Jews had not rebuilt any of Jerusalem and had not regained any form of governance. But as recorded in Ezra 7:12-26, in 457 BC, Artaxerxes gave Ezra the right to restore and rebuild cities, including Jerusalem, and the right to self-govern the Judea area. One last command often noted is in 444 BC, Nehemiah is given a command to return to Judea and help his countrymen rebuild. However, this command was more of a royal personal allowance to allow Nehemiah to return to Judea, and not an imperial decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem. The 7th year of Artaxerxes, according to Jewish reckoning, extended from the fall of 458 to the fall of 457 BC. Ezra 7:9 tells us that Ezra left Babylon on the first day of the first month, which was probably early April, depending upon the moon and the barley harvest. He arrived in Jerusalem on the first day of the fifth month, which would then be early August, 457 BC. We're not exactly certain of the date in which the king's commission was delivered to the king's lieutenants and governors, but we can be quite certain that it was at least August of 457 BC. The prophecy appears to have multiple segments: 7 weeks, or 49 years, and then 62 weeks, which is 62 weeks, or 434 years, and then the final week, or 7 years, with a note that the street shall be built again, and the wall, even in troublous times. The 49 years would end in 408 BC. We can only surmise that Jerusalem took 49 years to finish rebuilding. Malachi and Nehemiah are generally agreed as the final books of the Old Testament to be written, and closed the Old Testament immediately prior to 408 BC. Nehemiah definitely details the rebuilding occurring in troublous times. 490 years after 457 BC brings us to 34 AD, with the final week being 27 AD to 34 AD. Jesus' ministry is generally agreed to be within that period. A gospel synchronization shows that Jesus was baptized in the Jordan in the fall of 27 AD and was crucified 3.5 years later after 3 Passovers in the spring of 31 AD. In the fall of 34 AD, at the end of the 7 years, we see Stephen presenting a speech, presenting God's covenant lawsuit to the Jews that they have not been faithful. Reading in detail and comparing to Chronicles 18:18, we see that God made Stephen a prophet. With the stoning of Stephen, the Jews finally, officially, and completely rejected God. A couple of phrases in verse 24 sets the stage. 70 weeks, or the 490 years, were determined upon the Jews and Jerusalem to finish the transgression and fill their cup of iniquity. Christ's sacrificial atonement for mankind was to make an end of sins and to make reconciliation for iniquity and bring in everlasting righteousness, ending the earthly sanctuary system and reconciling man to God. And to seal up the vision and prophecy, sealing up is not putting away, but fulfilling. By precisely fulfilling the 490-year prophecy, we gain assurance of the 2300-year prophecy in Daniel 8. And to anoint the most holy, When Christ ascended to heaven, he began his ministerial work in the heavenly sanctuary, further tying Daniel 8 to Daniel 9. There are numerous expressions at the end of the chapter that are difficult to translate, and different translations often attempt to prop up or reinforce different understandings, obscuring the text even more. The structure of the last three verses of 25, 26, and 27 follows a pattern of the first part about the Messiah and the second part about the city. Verse 25 is mostly self-explanatory. The first part is about the Messiah, in this case mentioning the general time frame of his coming at the end of the 7 and 62 weeks. The second part is about Jerusalem, and thus the Jews, and in this verse it is the construction of the city that is mentioned. In verse 26, the first part is about the Messiah. He will be cut off, but not for himself. His death was for all of mankind. The second part is about Jerusalem and the Jews. In this verse, it's Jerusalem's destruction. The people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, and the end thereof shall be with a flood, and unto the end of the war desolations are determined. The people of the prince have to be the Jews. By rebelling against Rome, they forced Rome to destroy Jerusalem in 70 AD. Jerusalem was made desolate. And lastly, verse 27, the first part again is about the Messiah, middle of the week covenant fulfillment. Earthly sacrifices and oblations are no longer significant. The second part is about Jerusalem and Jews, and also about the destruction of the destructor. This final portion of the last verse of Daniel has puzzled many commentators, leading some to believe that it must be about the Antichrist. Most commentators suggest this shows that with the advent of Jerusalem being destroyed, the temple would also be destroyed. As the Jewish military continued to retreat into the city and eventually took refuge in the temple, Titus' troops destroyed the temple against Titus' wishes. However, Rome was not to go unjudged and also would eventually be punished. The wording Jesus used in Matthew 24's Olivet Discourse parallels Daniel's verses 26 and 27, confirming that it's about the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD.